At this time, I will call the August 9th work session for the Harnett County Board of Commissioners to order. Welcome everyone that's here today. If you have not signed up, if you want to speak in the public input and you have not signed up, after we do the invocation and the pledge, we're going to pick up the form. So if, after we do the pledge and the invocation, if you'll make your way to the back and sign up, that way you'll be on the list to speak. At this time, I'm going to ask Vice Chairman Nickel to lead us in the pledge and the invocation.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for another wonderful day on this earth. Lord, please lay your hand upon everybody that is suffering in this world. Lord, I ask you that you please continue to be with those who are sick and affected with COVID and this new monkeypox that's going around. Lord, I pray that you be with all the first responders, all the health professionals, and also be with all the military, Lord, so you can please bless them and let them keep us safe. Lord, be with this Board of Commissioners today. Let us make the best decisions for this county. In your name we pray.
Thank you, Commissioner Nickel. All right.
You got in my head.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have one. We'd like to delete item 13, the discussion on the Southeastern Development Commission. Due to the length of some other items on the agenda, we feel better to push that item off to the following work session, which will be August 30th. So we'll put that on the August 30th agenda in the interest of time.
All right. Any objections to that change? All righty. At this time, we will move on to item 3, presentation concerning Shelter Planners of America.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. Thank you for the opportunity to stand before you again. I won't take long. I'll just give you a real quick brief, and that is that we're going through a process to determine hopefully what the cost of a future project for the animal shelter would be. The county contracted with Shelter Planners of America, and the president of the company, Mr. Mike Bernard, is here today, and he's going to do a presentation. I will tell you that we, over the past several days, we provided a lot of statistics to his company and their review, and they've come up with some numbers. And yesterday we met all day long trying to figure out exactly what the county would be doing instead of future planning as far as shelters, animals, and those kind of things. So without further ado, Mr. Bernard, please.
Thank you, Barry. Members of the commissioners, thank you for allowing me to come here and speak with you about animal welfare. If my clicker works, I turned it to on. Excellent. So just a little agenda, trying not to take too much of your time, give you a broad overview of what's going on with animal welfare around the country, just talking about design goals, some of the common problems, show you some pictures of stuff, and then kind of quickly review the process, and then open it up to any questions if there are any. We are the most experienced animal shelter design firm in the nation. We have over 30 years of experience. We've worked with over 750 different groups. Now that's humane societies and other nonprofits, but of animal control, government-run shelters, over 350. We're the only firm that actually has shelter operation experience. Our founder actually operated 4 different animal shelters. We do fit every project to the community because animal welfare is not homogeneous across the United States. It has a lot to do with the people that live there and their belief, their culture, and that type of thing. And essentially, we pioneered the new generation of animal shelter designs around the country. This map shows, I think, about the most recent 250. Not every state in the union, but about 35 different states. Myself, I'm an architect with 44 years experience. I have literally hundreds of hours of animal welfare training from such organizations as Humane Society of the United States, Best Friends Animal Society, the Association for Animal Welfare Advancement, etc. Bill Mead, our founder, who is retired, trained as an architect and then worked for HSUS for 11 years. And then, as I mentioned, actually operated 4 different shelters. So kind of knows architecture and shelter operations. So that's where the bulk of our knowledge comes from. Jed Ford, he and I went to high school. He's a veterinarian. He kind of keeps us on track with what's going on in the medical profession, and animal welfare, sheltering, and veterinary medicine are now merged more than they used to be in the past. Obviously, animal shelter design has evolved. In the 1940s, it was a response to rabies, and dog pounds came about, and Bill Mead helped to try. These places were dark, damp, loud, no daylight. They were just places for animals to go to eventually be euthanized. And Bill Mead helped to change the trajectory of that to what we have now in modern animal sheltering. Some of the goals, we want to try to incorporate the best practices in humane animal care and design of facilities, reducing stress in animals, more comfortable 2-compartment kenneling, soundproofing, natural light, things of that nature. Disease control is paramount. If we're trying to have a high live release rate, we need to keep the animals healthy. In the past, if we were just animals were going there to be euthanized, it really didn't matter if they got sick because we were going to euthanize them anyway. In animal welfare, as little as 15 years ago in the United States, we were euthanizing about 20 million animals a year. As of last year, we think that's under 2 million, so we've come a long way. Creating a warm and welcoming environment for the shelter is important. We want to really become more of a retail store where we're, rehoming slightly used or pets, not euthanizing them. So an attractive place to come to. We think that socialization with the animals is very important to be incorporated into the design with walking trails and rooms where you can interact with the animals. We think public education is very important, and spay-neuter is very important. It's been shown nationwide that if we can get our pets altered, we can reduce the animal overpopulation problem and not have to build as big of buildings. It's actually the best money spent is in those programs. And then just thinking about the staff. Turnover in shelters is very high. Training new staff is expensive. And we found that it really doesn't take that much, like in terms of money, to have thought carefully about, well, where does the staff park? Where do they come in? Where's their locker? Do they have the right equipment? It's pretty simple stuff, but it really can help the attitude of the people that work in the shelter. And of course, their attitude, translates to customers, which are our potential adopters. Some of the common problems are poor floor finishes, poor drainage, like your existing shelter. The drainage is actually backwards. It makes the staff spend a lot more time trying to clean the shelter. They're dragging hoses through the feces in order to get in there and turn around and try to push the water the other way to the drain. Sound control is a major problem in shelters. HVAC systems. On the right there, you see a photograph, and I won't name that facility, but that's a fan covered with bird poo. On the right, you see a photograph or an image of how we bring fresh air into the walkway to cover the noses of the public, and then towards the animal, and then out. So there's a lot of advancements in HVAC, just inefficient and poor kennel design. The two compartment housing is superior. Your oldest part of your building has what we know called single compartment housing. So the staff has to get that animal out of there and go put it somewhere while they're cleaning the kennels. It really increases the amount of time it takes to clean the animals or clean the kennels. And then, isolating animals from view. Y'all don't let people go in the back room where animals are. We think the animals should be viewable. There's a few exceptions of, sick animals or dangerous dogs. But, the current situation is you don't have any quarantine areas. So all those dogs that are in the back are kind of off limits, and for good reason under the current facility plan. Just showing you some pictures. I just picked out some county owned and operated facilities. This is Montgomery County, Virginia. This is Harris County, which is Houston, Texas. So it's 65 million or 65,000 square feet. Their animal intakes 20,000 animals a year, and yours is only 3,000. So this is a really big facility. This is a little closer to you guys. This is Beaufort County, South Carolina, so just south of Charleston. This is Chatham County. It's actually just a county near here, and this just opened, I think, last year, year before last. Williamson County, Tennessee, is the county just south of Nashville. That's 35,000 square feet, so it's a pretty big facility, but it's one of the highest per capita incomes in the nation. This is my own city. This is Arlington, Texas, home of the Dallas Cowboys. The process, so we have broken this process down into 3 steps. Step 1 is a needs assessment study. That's what we're doing right now. These are the things we cover. We look at the site, the people and animal level, but we do look at staffing and operation cost as well. We have different types of meetings, one like this today, just introductory information. The centerpiece of the needs assessment is a building space program. This lists every room in the building, how many of those rooms we need, what's the square footage of those rooms, and the features of the room. So it's a pretty intense document. We do look very carefully at your human population and your animal intake. Your current animal intake for 2022 is on pace for to be 2.2% of the human population. The national norm now is about 2 to 3%, and so you're right in that range, which is good. We see outliers, of course. But that ratio is very important when you're forecasting the future projection, because your projected human population is staggering. Over the next 10 years, expected to increase by 10%, and over the next 20 years, expected to increase by 25%. More population, more animals generally, but that ratio of intake to human population is how we will, and we have a pretty robust computer program that we developed proprietary to us to look at that ratio projected out over time to see what that is to forecast the animal intake into the future. Step 2 is a conceptual design process. Now, this is not the type of drawings it takes to hire, a contractor and build a building, but it does lay out the building on the site, the parking, the staff parking separate from the public parking, the floor plan, showing all the walls, doors, windows, cabinetry. It starts out as kind of a loose freehand and then goes to more of a CAD type layout, and then we can put some color on it and do color renderings if necessary to get a direction for your project. And then step 3 later, sometime in the future, if you decide to build a new animal shelter, then we can come in and do the structural engineering and all the stuff it takes to build a building. And with that, that's the formal presentation. I try to do that really quick. We don't have any findings of what we're going to be proposing for your organization yet. We're just now in the fact-finding portion. In the next 6 to 8 weeks, we'll come forth with a report, a needs assessment study with what we think might be appropriate here. But I'm glad to answer any questions.
So basically, you're saying by about the October timeframe, you should be able to present a needs assessment to this board?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
We'll present it first to the staff, make sure we've understood everything, and then probably it'll make its way to the board.
Any questions about this presentation?
I don't have any questions about it, but I would like for you to repeat how many animals our present shelter hold at this time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you, ma'am.
I would like for you to repeat how many animals our shelter at this time that we have now hold.
The intake now for
Intake,
2022 is on pace for about 3,200 animals a year.
32 animals. I'm sure 30.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of Of course, you have a healthy population, but it is in character with the national norm. So there are places in the South that it's much higher. We've seen as high as 6%. But
Well, I expect ours to grow too with the population growth that we have here. So that's the reason I'm asking the question. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a question, but I do want to thank you for the information this morning. I do look forward to the needs assessment once it's developed, and look forward to continuing to get some thoughts and ideas going forward with this project. Thank you.
all right, thank you very much. Appreciate your time today.
Let me ask one other question. Will your assessment include a recommendation as to possible location of the shelter, or is it just building size, that type of thing?
Yeah, so we did look at 3 possible sites of land that is already owned by the county, so there wouldn't have to be the cost to acquire property. In the needs assessment, we're going to take those 3 sites and do an evaluation and rank them as to, based on visibility, accessibility, location within the service area, the travel distance to your constituents, and suitability. Is it a floodplain? Does it have utilities? Basic stuff. It's not a detailed civil. We're not civil engineers, but it'll probably recommend which is the best one.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate the information. Look forward to hearing your report.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Roush, I believe you've got the next 2 or 3 items.
Good morning.
Morning, sir.
Morning.
The first one is 4 fees that we're looking at implementing. First 2 are for genital wart removal. It's a simple procedure. Anything more complicated will require a surgeon. The next one is an AFP test for the prenatal program. And then the last one is an increase in a vaccine that we offer, Proquid. That's the a combination vaccine of MMR and varicella. And that was the price increase we had from the manufacturer.
Any questions for Mr. Roush about that? Okay. As I understand it, you're just asking for approval of this increase plus the established fees. If it pleases the board, we'll put this on the consent agenda for our meeting on Monday. All right.
Okay, the next one is, this is really carry forward money from last year for the aging program. It's for, supplemental funding of, a little over $18,043. And it goes through September through the federal fiscal year. And it's to help pay for the, site manager through the community college at the Dunn site. And then some, other, assets for that program.
And you're asking to just carry
Carry
this
it
over?
forward, yes.
Okay. You're good with that? Any questions? All right, we'll move that to the consent agenda for Monday also. Okay,
And the last one is a continuation of the aging program. This is new money for that same program, is to help pay for the Dunn site manager, to help buy supplemental food like Ensure and Boost for residents that need it. We're also looking at getting some volunteers, some gas cards for our volunteers that do Meals on Wheels, that type thing in our RSVP program. And then to do some emergency food boxes to buy some non-perishable food for folks that want something on the weekend or, during the winter when bad weather's out, that type thing. That money runs through 2024, so that's something we'll be bringing back throughout the next couple of fiscal years.
okay. Is it the consensus of the board to approve this approval of the $89,568 in ARPA funding?
Yes.
Okay, we'll move that to the consent agenda. Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move to item 7.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. What you have this morning in front of you is the Soil and Water Conservation requesting permission to accept stream flow rehabilitation assistance program funds in the amount of $379,528 from North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. If you'll remember, Lynn Lambert came before you last week and talked a little bit about this as far as it may be a lesser amount. The good thing about this, there's no matching funds. So what you have in front of you this morning is a project ordinance in the amount of $379,528. Just asking for your approval to move forward with this so the agreement can be signed with NCDA. This project will be used to clean out the vegetation in Neals Creek and Kenneth Creek area.
And this will be applied to both creeks.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions about this? Everyone in agreement to accept this funding? So we'll move that to consent agenda and we'll approve that on Monday.
Good
Thanks,
deal.
sir.
Thank you all a lot.
Okay, Mr. Snipes here?
Yes, sir. Morning, everybody. My name's Kenneth Snipes. I'm over Facilities. We're asking the board to take our recommendations in approving the vendors for a 3-year service proposal. These vendors are our pest control, elevators, our cleaning service, fire extinguishers, generators, and HVAC service. Under the pest control, we would like to, if y'all would, maybe accept Jackson's exterminators for $83,520. They were the lowest bidder, and they already do some work for the county, so they are already a vendor. So they have proven their service. The Tyson and Crunt, they were the only service provider that we had to actually put a bid in. So the cleaning services, we would like to stay with Amico. That's our current vendor now. They do an awesome job, and plus they are the lowest bidder. Fire extinguishers, we would like to go with Parrish. They are a lower bid, and they have some contracts with Campbell University and stuff like that. Our generator service, we would like to go with Power Secure for $21,735. They were the lowest bidder, and some of their contacts had great feedback for them. And our HVAC, we would like to stay with Johnson Controls on it for $1,387,100. And that's just our recommendations. If y'all have any questions.
Any questions about this?
So I'm assuming we have Johnson Controls throughout the county?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
For everything, yes, sir. Yes.
We tried
And to make a change in that would be a major undertaking.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
For 911, the sheriff's office, EOC, everything, it would be a very big, major undertaking.
Have we tried to talk them down any?
Sir?
Have we tried to get them down any lower?
I did try to talk to them about that, and I could go back to them again if you need me to, sir. But they're saying with their numbers and everything that they have for the last 3 years, the cost has gone up tremendously. And plus, we have just added this building, which made the contract go up, and we added a lot of stuff for public utilities to our contract too, sir, which made it go up also. But I can go back to them if you would like me to.
Yes.
Sir. Oh, yes, sir. And also the other vendor that we had to bid on it, Heat Transfer Solution, everything, they can't do everything that's stated up under our contract. So that's another reason we didn't choose them. So
I read that in the.
they said that they would have to partnership with Johnson Controls to do some of the work.
And I'm guessing that if we tried to switch from Johnson Controls to another vendor, it would cost us over $300,000 to do it.
Yes, sir.
So,
And they're also asking, Heat Transfer Solution is also asking, instead of doing a 30-day assessment, they want a 90-day assessment. So anything within the first 90 days that breaks, they want the county to pay for it. And as they, with Johnson Controls, we would not have to do that. It would just fall right up under them and keep on going.
Why will it cost
ma'am, this is not a public discussion item. Any other questions or comments concerning this item? Is everyone in agreement to approve this request? If so, we'll put it on the consent agenda for Monday night. All right, we'll move that to consent agenda. All right. Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sachs, you gonna do the honors?
Yes, sir. I'll take the first one at least. First of two items that'll be coming up next week on your agenda from the Development Services Department is a rezoning. This is a little over 9.5 acres there in the Neals Creek Township up Matthews Road, right at the corner of Matthews and Tripp. As Melissa pulls up that vicinity map there, that's a really good indicator of you can see how this area is growing. I'm sure you're very familiar with it. 401 corridor, 210 corridor, railroad tracks. All the areas highlighted in orange are is now Lillington's jurisdiction that they've satellite annexed. The majority of those are R6, and then a few of those are even townhome developments. The one up right there at corner of Tripp Road and 210. So looking at that, as well as the way that Matthews Road and everything grows, just a little background information to look at this request from RA 40 to RA 30. Site out there is vacant farmland. Per the application's intent for this independent builder to build residential homes. They build a variety of floor plans, but they said the majority of their recent sales have been starter homes and almost kind of and they've had a few multi-generational type homes to where they've had some elderly folks even move in because they're seeing some need for one-story ranch homes versus a two-story. So it'd be on a larger lot and retirees or starter home type developments, but that's beside the fact on that side of things. In the area, single-family residents, stick-built and manufactured homes, and of course, several developments in the area that are now within Lillington's jurisdiction. This area would be public water and private septic. It's RA 30, predominantly all to the west side there, RA 40, and then also some mix of RA 30 on the inside of Matthews Road, as you see. The whole area is medium density residential, and then the purple area there is that compatibility target area that's over the 401 corridor.
So the lot sizes would fit well with the land use classification. Staff went through the evaluation, would recommend approval. Planning board also at their meeting voted unanimously to recommend approval. There's some site photos if you haven't been out to that area lately. At the August 1st meeting, planning board members discussed the coordination of services, of course, in that area, since it's a mix of county and municipal. They were just looking at the utilities, police, fire, EMS. Also discussed was the potential higher density that could have existed if the site was annexed into Lillington. In response, the concern, a concerned citizen spoke about just overall growth for the area. She was just pretty much against any new homes in the area. She was concerned about traffic in schools and so forth. A planning board member did ask her to be sure and relay those concerns to the school board as well. So they took note, but then also wanted to make sure that she had the proper contacts to see if, and then also to see if the school board had any comments that the planning board could use going forward in any sort of cases or future plans. But again, the applicant did not consider annexing this into the town based on the lot size that they wanted. They didn't want to wait a year for annexation and utilities, and they wanted a bigger lot. However, the rezoning from RA40 to RA30 is probably just based off of the lot frontage, which is 150 feet to 100 feet. Staff is able to questions.
Any questions for Mr. Sykes about this? How many houses are we talking about projected?
5 or 6. Yeah, because it would be considered a minor subdivision. So it would only be allowed a max of 5 on the state road. If they built a private road, they could only get 6. And so I would imagine just 5, the way he's looking at it. It's sort of a longer lot.
And these will be less expensive, I guess, than some of the other houses that are being built in that area?
Well, that was one of the comments that he voiced that in the planning board, so that's why I just relayed it here. But he said that the majority of his clients were either starter homes or he had sold some recently to elderly folks that they were looking for. They still like the larger lot, but they also like the ranch. And a one-story home typically, it's going to be on maybe have a bigger footprint. It's going to be on a bigger lot versus going straight vertical. But that's just he's a builder that's built, I think, in Harnett County for a while. I don't know him personally, but he said he's got different kinds of different products or whatever. But he did not. He specifically said he did not want to annex into the town to wait. And then also, of course, if you annex into the town, you have to do their water and their sewer. And he just didn't want. It wasn't worth it to do now to then get a smaller lot.
I have a question. This does not stop the town from annexing into the town area, does it? Just because he said
this parcel would, yes, ma'am. Yeah, because you have to be annexed is 100% voluntarily. So that unless their septic's failed, they still either way they'd have to request the town. The town cannot annex the development without their okay.
Okay. Now, are you sure about the number of houses they're building in that area, on that road?
On this one track?
On this one track?
I'm not 100% sure because I've not seen a design, and of course I wouldn't.
So if you haven't seen a design, you can't
that.
really say how many houses going to be built there?
I cannot, no, ma'am.
Let me, if you could too, real quick. Ms. McCoy, as far as, and I've done this in the past too, bear in mind this is a rezoning request and not a request for a subdivision. So what Jay knows is what he's been told by the developer at this point, that it would be a minor subdivision. if it's rezoned tomorrow and they decide to do anything that's available to them in the RA30 zoning district, it could be a change. So I just would like to remind the board and everyone in the audience tonight or today to understand that rezoning changes can certainly, we're not up here debating on the number of houses.
Yeah,
Let's debate the actual zoning change. That
well,
way we're sure.
I understand that, and I'm not here to debate the number of houses, but I do know,
I
and
understand.
I have seen that we are packing too many houses in these areas that we are rezoning.
I
And
agree.
that's not good for the county, and it's not good for us citizens here.
I understand. I very well know the position that you have on that matter. This area is one
I'm
of those
aware,
high density areas that's going through that transition. As you know, the town of Lillington is annexed all around it, and that's a more urban environment, and so therefore a rezoning to RA30 from RA40 would make a lot of sense, especially because it's adjacent.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm
Yes.
much familiar with the area,
Yes, ma'am.
but I still have concerns.
I understand.
I think that we're just packing too many homes here on these, in these areas where we're rezoning. And I'm not opposed to growth. Let me put that up, say that very clearly to you. But with growth, it causes problems too. And we have, as commissioners, have to be in a position to solve these problems.
I understand.
So when we make these decisions, we have to ask the questions of what we can expect for the future. So that's all I'm concerned about.
Yes, ma'am. And those are all valid concerns.
Okay, okay, thank you very much.
You're
I'm not trying to give you a hard way, but you know me. I'm just gonna ask the right questions because I'm sitting up here not for myself.
That's fine by me.
Any other questions or comments about this rezoning request? All right, we'll move to the next rezoning request.
All right, the next one, we had several at the planning board. Three got tabled by the request of the applicant, and then one was tabled before it even got to the board. So they'll be potentially kind of going back to the planning board in the next couple of months. So it's only two items for y'all, that rezoning, and this is a land use plan map amendment. We've looked at these, and I'll say similar to rezoning in the past. However, Mark's going to speak to that later on. How this land use map amendments aren't really meant to be looked at on parcel by parcel. It's more of a wide swath. However, our development regulations are geared towards our land use plan and the land use map, and utilizing water and sewer. So you can get different lot sizes by right. This is a request to change approximately 214 acres from agricultural and rural residential to medium density residential. It's in the Barbecue Township, right on NC 27, right across the street from Western Harnett High School and Middle School and the Barbecue Park. It is also has some environmental features out there, wetlands, floodplain, and then classified as environmental sensitive areas on the land use map there, as you see. That swath of blue is the agricultural and rural residential. That essentially runs from on the north side of 27 from outside of Lillington all the way towards probably all the way to 87. It's pretty rural, that side. South of 27, as you can see there, that's low density residential there where the school is, heading back up towards Nursery Road as it gets back closer to Anderson Creek and Buffalo Lake area. So that's a pretty big swath of low density residential. Again, this request is for medium density residential. The property is vacant. Land uses are single family residential, of course, the middle of the high school, the county park, and lots of undeveloped area. Per the application, this request is to assist in residential development while also preserving the environmentally sensitive areas. Public water and public sewer would be utilized. It's again, you can see that it would be accessed almost, that's the existing track or drive there. I'm not sure, we haven't seen a development or a plan or anything right now. Staff did recommend to deny. Planning board also recommended to deny. We looked at the impact to the surrounding community, being at low density. The requested land use classification is not compatible, nor is it in the vicinity of any adjacent classifications. Staff as well as the planning board looked at potential impacts to traffic and congestion out there. It probably would require at least 2 entrances into the development, but they would both be directly onto NC 27. One engineer did speak during the planning board meeting, and he looked at approximately 300 to 330 homes in this area at 10,000 square feet if it went forward with medium density residential. Again, the planning board looked at the potentially higher density that could create traffic issues. Smaller setbacks and smaller lot sizes in a rural area such as this could create an issue with fire safety and response times. One adjacent landowner did speak, and he was just concerned about his landlocked property and then just made a request that if the development does take place in any shape or form, that he just get a stub. And typically, that is our policy, that we require developments to stub into larger, potentially developable tracts. But again, planning board did vote unanimously to recommend denial, and staff was recommending denial as well. Staff is available for questions or anything on this.
Any questions, Mr. Sykes, about this piece of property? Or about this
The board
request?
voted what? I mean, denial,
Yes, ma'am. Planning board and staff recommend denial.
impressed. One time I don't have anything to say.
Believe it or not, there's a method to our, I don't want to say method to our madness, if you will. But
Thank you.
Mark will elaborate on some more of this stuff that's going on with the land plan.
We had another one on that Highway 87 that didn't make it to you, and we put to deny that one also, so it didn't get to you. We would have had 2 in 1 month, who knows? No, what I want to take about 2 minutes of your time and let the board know about these land use plan amendments. They're starting to come more often. We hadn't really ever had them in the past, but what it is developers and folks are starting to understand that if I can go change the land use plan, then I can get more density. And land use plans, while they're meant to change, they're not meant to change like rezonings. And so we started looking around at other jurisdictions on how they handled it. And you'll see other jurisdictions do it quarterly. They'll take all the land use plan requests and maybe they'll look at them quarterly. Maybe they'll look at them once or twice a year. But it's not something that like what we're seeing where we get it monthly. And so I just wanted to put it on the board's radar, maybe get your opinion on if it would be okay for us to do an amendment to the UDO that would allow us to look at land use plan changes on a quarterly or maybe a yearly basis. A couple of reasons, like I said, typically land use plans require, like Jay said earlier, large swaths of land. It's not meant to look at one particular tract individually. Now, when you're dealing with like 300 and 500 acres, that does change things. But at a minimum, a lot of your land use plans are done at a land use update for your actual ordinance. And we have one of those on the horizon. That'll be on the CIP for this coming year to update the entire county land use plan. And so it may be a good idea to hold off on some of these until we get and go through that process so we can look at it on a more, on a more countywide basis, so to speak. So I just wanted to put that out there. I didn't know if any of you all had some comments. There was a, I also wanted to mention that the planning board actually came to us at this month's meeting and said and kind of asked us to kind of look at that also. We kind of put it out there, and then they were like, "Yeah, I think that's a really good idea if we kind of look at these occasionally and not every month like rezonings." So.
I think doing these, if we did them semi-annually,
Okay.
it's just my opinion.
I understand.
What does the rest of the board think? Quarterly, semi-annually, or annually?
May I ask a question, Mr. Chair? Mark, the meeting you're talking about where you look at land use plan from the countywide perspective, how often do you have that?
Well, you're supposed to have a good update every 5 years on your land use plan. Of course, our land use plan for the county was adopted, comprehensive land use plan for the county, really we had one in place, but it was kind of probably 20, 30 years old. 2015 was the last time that we had a real land use plan for the county, and then we done an update or a small area plan for the northwest area. If you'll remember, we done a plan for that. And now we're moving on 7 years, and so it's time for us to do an update for the entire county. Occasionally, you're supposed to go back and look at these things and talk about the things that Ms. McCoy has, the issues that we're dealing with as far as our growth, and look at our schools and say, hey, look, this area's growing this way versus what we wanted it to be, and maybe we need to look at it a different way.
And that's the reason.
It's a good process.
That's a good question, and I hadn't gotten there yet, but I was going to recommend, since you're, here again, my opinion, ask the board their opinion on this also, but if we're going to change the UDO to do land use discussions semi-annually or whatever the board decides on, I think we ought to go ahead and put it in the UDO or an ordinance or a policy or something, that we will have a land use plan update no more than every 5 years.
That's a great policy. I would love that. Now, usually cost comes along with updating it, and that becomes an issue, but the way that this county's growing, and we're a much different county than we were 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I think it's a great policy that we automatically understand that every 5 years we're going to have this update and we're going to look at these things. I think it's, you're just preaching to the choir when it comes to that.
Well, I didn't say every 3 years because that might be a little extreme, but
well, I mean, you got to give it time to work out.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I truly think we need to discuss this, come up with the adequate number of years, simply because of the growth, the way the growth is in this county. We're growing so fast, and I'm not trying to stop the developers from growing here, but we have to be the one to control this growth. And we gotta have some room for affordable homes too.
Absolutely.
That's something I wanna see. Homes that are affordable for the average citizens here in this county. I mentioned that in our last meeting. So, you know, it's a thought for us to think about. I'm not against 5 years, but 5 years seem to be a little stretched out there. Can we just, Mr. Chairman, can we just discuss and come up with a number of years?
Let's see, our next work session is the 30th. Why don't we move this item to the August 30 work session for further discussion? Is that agreeable with the?
We're talking about discussion of the, and I don't know the
Of the policy to
appropriate
update
term,
the land
but
use
the,
plan.
Right.
looking at land use plan, let's say every
Yeah.
5 years, and then also a discussion on how often we're going to, or
Right.
you were going to sit down and take a look at these requests for
Okay.
changes.
Okay, we'll look at it both in more
We'll
detail.
put that on the August 30 agenda, and then of course, this item, this land use plan, do we want to go ahead and act on that on Monday, or?
Right, that's the reason I wanted to clarify that. So we're going to leave the proposed land use map amendment case number Plan 2206-0005 on the agenda for next week. But this other discussion we'll have at the next work session. That's,
Is that agreeable with everyone?
That's the
All
way
right.
I understand it. Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Ward, come up and talk to us about the wastewater, or the Wake County Water District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
Thank
members of the board. Staying on that same theme of development, being this is in Wake County we're going to talk about, but it certainly affects us in Harnett County. I'm here to seek direction from the board and guidance as far as future development in our Wake County Water District. If you look at the map, there, the item in yellow, in pink or shade of red there is where we have water lines that serve customers in Wake County. Now, just to give you a little history, about 30 years ago, development requested to extend off our existing lines that we had that serve the Duncan area. We've got a tank there on 42, just south of the county line. The county's in gray, and Duncan is at the intersection there of 42 and Buckhorn Duncan Road. We've got a tank. We have a 12-inch line that goes up Piney Grove Wilbon Road and then connects with Highway 42 west of Fuquay and then goes to the tank. Another 12-inch line on 401 going to the Wake County line that served Fuquay years ago. We've been selling water to Fuquay for years, 30 plus years. We continue to sell them water. They've been a good partner of ours. They buy water from us and from Johnston County as well, and the city of Raleigh. The majority of their water comes from us. They have been talking about buying this water district simply because they've been interested for years, as they should be as a town. They're starting to grow westward, and these water lines are right in their jurisdictional area. In fact, in 2007, they created an urban service area that encompasses this whole area where the water lines are. And we entered into an agreement. It was actually an amendment. The original agreement was in 2003 we had with them that basically said if they annexed, the agreement set forth a method to sell those water lines and make that possible. So that happened in 2003. In 2007, when they established their urban service area, we actually amended that agreement with the town of Fuquay and with Wake County and created this district that you see in front of you. So, and that continued along that same theme. If they annexed, then the water lines would be theirs and we would sell those water lines to them. So we've moved forward in the last 20 years basically going along that theme. The problem has been that the legislature about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever, decided that towns can't involuntarily annex customers or citizens in their periphery. It has to be voluntary. Some of that has already been spoken about today when dealing with development. So that put a kind of kink in the agreement, but we've always tried to keep our part of the agreement, as has the town of Fuquay. And so it really set forth the method, and we always went with the supposition that they eventually would want to buy those lines. And we're having those discussions even now. They're willing to provide us loss of revenue for those customers for 5 years, and to buy the infrastructure from us. So if we were to sell these customers to the town of Fuquay, the value to us would be north of $1 million easily for that, because we've got about 550 customers out there now. The issue has been all the growth that we have in Northwest Harnett. And so in the last 2 to 3 years, we've really limited development in that area. Basically because our water supply is finite. We've only got so much treatment capacity at the water plant. So we haven't wanted to see citizens in Wake County, while we weren't opposed to them getting water from us or developing in that area, our priority is our own citizens here, as you're aware of. So we've limited development somewhat in that area, but we still receive requests from developers about additional development. We've got one out there now where a developer wants to develop about 75 lots out there. So we're seeking direction from you on what you prefer us to do here. You know, it probably will take 2 years for the development, something like that. So is that 2 years, is 75 lots a big deal? Is it not? You know, we can debate that. We just want a general guidance from you on how to move forward. Because there are certain developments that Fuquay would like to see the developments, in my opinion, because this is just additional future water customers and revenue for them. And plus, that's a way to see their town expand. Right now, the last discussions that we've had with the town, they are doing an engineering study that look at them providing their own water to this district, which is really what we're waiting on. We would like to sell them to district. It's not a big deal to us. You know, 550 customers out of 45,000. Plus they're in Wake County, so they don't have the same priority. They do for health and safety and everything else, but they're not Harnett County citizens, so we prefer to use that water to support our own growth in the area, wherever that may be, for a matter of fact. So we just want some guidance from you. It'll probably take 2 to 3 years for Fuquay, even if they, you know, the study comes through, they work out a plan to supply their own water there, then it's probably going to take 2 or 3 years before that happens, before they can get the lines constructed, et cetera. So what do we do in the interim? With development coming to us now, wanting to do 75 lots. Just last year, the town wanted to extend a water line down Burt Road, which doesn't have, half Burt Road on the west side of Burt Road has our water line on it. They wanted to extend that back to Piney Grove, eastward toward Piney Grove, Wilbon Road, and there's probably 30 houses on that road, and they wanted to develop the property just north of that. So we probably then would have looked at maybe 150 additional customers from that development. We kind of nixed that. We told Fuquay, you know, even though they were going to put the water line in, and again, these aren't water lines that we paid for in Wake County. Development paid for these water lines. The county didn't use any of our revenue or our borrowed funds to extend water lines in this area. This came from development and was given to us. So we're just asking for direction from you about how you would like us to proceed in the interim. And we're continuing to move forward with the town of Fuquay, where they would like to buy this water district from us when they, again, complete this engineering study, when they are able to construct their own line and serve that. Because it really doesn't do any good if we're going to continue to supply the water directly like we do now. We'll continue to sell water to them on a wholesale basis, but then they need to run their own line to the district to serve it. So that it completely becomes their customers at that point. I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. I know that's a lot in a short period of time, so.
I've got a question, Mr. Ward. Not too long ago, there was quite a bit of conversation about Fuquay entering into an agreement to purchase water from Lee County.
Correct.
and they were wanting to run a water line up through there.
Yes, sir.
What's the status of that?
I know that it's my understanding, and I don't know all the details, because that involves, it's the city of Sanford is that's with, not Lee
Right.
County.
Yep.
The city of Sanford has a major project that's really, in somewhat, is tied in with that VinFast development and the mega site there, where they're going to expand their water plant and provide water to Chatham County, Pittsboro, and to Fuquay, and to Holly Springs. I don't know the finalization of any of that. That's been planned for a couple of years. But that's another method for Fuquay to get water to this area without tying directly onto our line. So I think they got some money in the latest budget. I think there was $1 million appropriation or something to Sanford to facilitate some of that, to get water to that area of Wake County. So I think that's probably coming. I know we have issues with them running water lines in Highway 42, down Highway 42 on our right of way. As you know, we're building, the school system is building the Northwest Harnett Elementary School in that area right now. So we're providing water through that same corridor on Highway 42. In fact, we should be going to bid on that project very soon to do that. And so, but to answer your question, I think maybe some of the water will come from the city of Sanford. Yes.
And I think the city of Sanford got, and I think this came through Commerce, I think they got $50 million to run those water lines to VinFast.
Yeah, something like that. I know it was a large appropriation that they got, yes.
But we have no idea when they might run or what might happen there.
That's right.
The 75 home development,
Yes, sir.
how would we do that? Would we put a master meter and sell them bulk and let them put the other meters in? Or do we want to put all the meters in those 75 homes?
Can we blow that map up any, Ben? Yeah, there you go. Okay, you see that part of that area, and I can't read that legend. Part of that, you see the yellow area, the northernmost area there? The yellow area to the left that's still in the pink, move right there where the cursor is. That's the area we're talking about.
Right.
That's the property. Well, that water line is ours that's on Burt Road right there. So, no, the developer would actually put in the water lines within that development, and they would just tie on to our existing water line right there. So it's all retail. There is no bulk metering or anything like that.
There's no bulk metering.
That's correct. Those are our customers, just like they're in Harnett County.
Okay, all right. That was a question about, would we use a master meter there?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Have you had any conversation with the developer about, because the developer's under the impression that they're going to put in the meters and they're going to collect the fees and all that. Have you had any conversations?
I just had one initial conversation with the developer, and he was still in the preliminary stages of looking at, purchasing an option or actually purchasing the land and going forward with the development. He just wanted to know from our perspective, would we allow the development of 75 lots? Could he get water from Harnett County for the development? But what would happen is his contractor would put in the lines within development, and it would be our meters and our water lines that they use. There would be no bulk metering. So sometimes there's confusion about that, but those are just our water accounts as normal. They would pay us system development fees just like any other developer.
And what happens 2 or 3 years down the road if Fuquay's getting water from Johnston County or Raleigh or the city of Sanford?
Right.
if they want to switch over and start using one of those sources.
Then it really would just facilitate or speed up the selling of this water district. You know, as long as both parties agree to that, then that's just a way to make that happen even quicker. So, for example, if Sanford ends up supplying the water district from a line they run from Lee County somewhere, and we don't have to supply them with water, then that would just facilitate that sale if both parties agree to it.
Any other questions for Mr. Ward?
And I think you answered this question toward the end, but once a point is reached where all of that infrastructure is sold to Fuquay, let's say,
Right.
then we may or may not continue to sell wholesale to them, water to them.
Well, we will still sell to Fuquay, and they'll just run it from their system and their lines to
Right.
that same area if they feed it that way.
Right.
Unless they bring the water from Sanford.
Right, unless
For
they,
example.
down the road,
Right.
I got you.
Correct. But they will not be our retail customers anymore. It won't be our meters in there. We won't be reading the meters. We won't be providing the maintenance. We won't be that'll all be the town of Fuquay's responsibility.
And
And in the last few years, I failed to mention this, excuse me, but like, they have required, Fuquay has required development to come into town in order to get water from us. Because the agreement said that in order to get water in the district, the town had to sign off on it. And that really hasn't been an issue. The town's had no problem with development out there for the most part. But recently, the areas you see in yellow, those are all in town. So they've required those developments to be annexed voluntarily into town. And we actually bill them at the town of Fuquay rates. We bill their garbage and everything for them. And so we send them a bill, it just says town of Fuquay on it. And we collect the revenue, and then Miss Honeycutt sends them a check. So anyway.
So we handle
Steve,
water.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying we handle the water. Do we handle any sewer there as well?
No, there's no sewer in that area that we serve. There is sewer in the yellow part of the town of Fuquay, but not in the pink yellow, the yellow that's in the pink there. There's no sewer in our district.
This area, maybe.
May I speak?
Yes.
That's right.
I think you were asking us for guidance as to where to go in the future based on these 75 homes that, I don't have a problem with that right now, those homes. But I'm thinking in the terms of what you're thinking. We need to take care of our own citizens as far as water. At the rate that this county is growing for population, we're gonna need another water plant. And we need to start thinking now in terms of the future of the growth that we're gonna have here in this county and the future of the water supply that's gonna be needed in this county. So I gotta say that in knowing you, since I've been on this board, and you have always made the right decisions and the best decisions for this county. But I do agree with you on some of your thinking about supplying water for our, having adequate supply of water for our own citizens. So I think that's something else we got to discuss too, with the population growth that we have here, and it's continuing to grow, as to make a decision on your request at some point. But I rely on you because you have always made the right decisions, and you never made a decision without coming before this board and asking the board's input on that decision. So that's all I have to say. I agree with you. We have got to start thinking about the future of our citizens here, those that are here now and those that are moving into this county, because water is a great resource.
Will supplying these 75 homes have a detrimental impact on Harnett County?
Not immediately. Um, you know, I always worry. It's hot, it's dry. The water plant's running 28 million gallons a day right now because it's so hot and dry. You know, we could get 5 inches of rain this month and it might only be doing 20 million gallons a day. But again, we do have in our CIP to build another water facility in Irwin. I see Snow's here, so he's well aware of that. And so the town has supported us with that venture too. So we're planning for future water supply. It'll just take time. But we're doing fine on water supply. But what scares me is, you know, once the development on Piney Grove Road, Serenity comes online and it's starting to, you know, that's going to come from that same straw, that same pipe, as you will, that serves those customers in Wake County. And that's a lot of homes, you know, 1,300 homes is a lot of homes. So that's double, almost triple the size of these 500 plus customers in Wake County. So that worries me some going forward. But if you're asking me if I think the 75 lots is, you know, end all be all, I would say no right now, but I would just like some kind of consensus from the board. You know, what about if one comes in next week or one comes in next month and future development wants to happen out there?
I agree with Ms. McCoy. I think we need to take these on an individual basis.
Okay,
I know that's hard to do.
right.
It's tough, but I don't think we're in a position to make a blanket statement, yes or no.
Right.
I think we need to look at each individual one. 75 lots, especially when they may, down the road, I don't know how, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how many years we're talking about. But at some point, they do plan to buy this, you know, the infrastructure.
Correct.
And at least that's what the mayor of Fuquay said. So, you know, I think we need to, when we get these requests, bring them to the board on an individual basis.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I could ask Steve. Steve, how much are we currently selling bulk to Fuquay? And what's our agreements with Fuquay for bulk?
Well, we've got down 2 million gallons of capacity in our water treatment plant. And so, and then we just completed an agreement that Thomas put together for us where we're selling them an additional 2 million gallons per day for 10 years.
Right.
A lot of that was sort of around the Sanford plan too. That gave them time to get more water from Sanford in the future because we told them years ago that we weren't in a position to provide them with 10 million more gallons a day or something like that. We were growing too fast internally and had our own needs. So that's when they sort of looked to Sanford or an outside source for more water. So that's what we're currently doing. We've got 2 separate agreements, one temporary for 10 more years for 2 million, and there's a permanent agreement for 2 million.
Right. And could you remind the board what our capacity is on our plant right now?
Yes, it's 42 million gallons per day. So when I say the plant's running at 28 million gallons a day, that gives you an idea. That's where we are currently.
The other thing I'd like to mention, Chair, I think that, you know, addressing these one at a time as we look at this, if the intent with Fuquay is to eventually take these over and provide water, that's going to come out of, it switches it from being us providing directly to us providing it through the bulk water supply. So we'll pull them off the table as far as usage in the future as they move. I think the other thing to consider is that this is definitely a topic that makes sense to discuss when we get a strategic plan and retreat time this coming year. I think that as this pressure continues to unfold for development, that it would be good for us to discuss this as a group and as for long-term vision. What do we want to protect of that capacity that he just mentioned, and so that we can really look at what is our long-term, because the pressure is going to continue to build as we look at our future.
Mr. Trout, Mr. Ward, I appreciate that thought, but it seems to me that for us to really have any meaningful discussion around that, we're going to need as much updated information as possible. I mean, it seems to me that, you know, if we're talking about 3 years for the buyout versus 10 years for the buyout, you know, there's just a lot of fluid things going on right now. So if we could get some kind of inclination from Fuquay, Sanford, whatever, as far as their intentions, I think that would help us with that discussion.
And I'll seek those. We're regularly in contact with their staff, so.
Right.
And I totally agree with that suggestion, simply because if you look at Fuquay, and I drive through there real often, they're growing just as fast as Harnett County. So the need for water is going to continue to grow there too. So I agree with what you were saying, that we need to evaluate that. Look at it.
I would like to suggest that maybe we put this on the September 13th work session for further discussion.
On which one?
The September 13th.
September 13th.
And maybe you can have some conversations with Fuquay to get an idea of, a little better idea
Sure.
of what they plan to do. Is that agreeable with everyone?
So is it the board's direction, you just want me to hold off with the developer now until that point? Do we have those future discussions? As far as allowing the development to proceed, because, you know, he's coming to me with an option wanting to purchase that property based on our intent.
Yeah, he is sort of in a bind to get a decision.
I don't see why he can't go forward with the 75 homes or whatever. And this discussion is for the future. It's
Right.
not for this. I don't see a problem with that right now. That's just me. I'm just.
I agree with you. Is the board agreeable to
The development.
to let the developer know that we'll work with him on supplying water for these 75 homes?
Would you restate that, please?
I said, is the board agreeable to let the developer know that we will supply water to him on these 75 homes?
If that's, you know, if that's the desire of the board, I have no problem with that. So we're talking about this review of each individual
Yeah.
development as it comes along. Mr. Ward needs to give
Right.
this gentleman an answer, and he feels that this time it won't tax us with the addition of 75 homes.
Correct.
Okay. I'm
And
fine.
and on the 13th, we will have a discussion on future usage by Fuquay and sort of try to start developing a policy on how to do these.
Sounds good with me.
Okay. Yep. From what I hear, the consensus of the board is to go ahead and allow the 75 homes. I think you get to negotiate how you're going to build that, because he's thinking it's going to be Fuquay Varina meters. And I wasn't going there because, you know, that's your ball game, but I knew what your feelings were.
Right, yeah. Well, everything there is our meters and our lines, so, again, I'll get more updated information from the town of Fuquay Varina as far as how they plan definitely to supply that district. It was my understanding they planned on running their own line westward to serve that. But they may plan to tie it directly into Sanford, but I'll get an update on that project as well.
Okay.
And where they stand. All right.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question, Steve. One question.
Okay.
Those 1,300 homes up there at Serenity Springs, that's ours, right, here in Harnett County?
Yes, those are in Harnett County.
They're all in Harnett County.
Yes.
When do you think that I know now they are they're getting ready to start building those homes. You don't know when we're gonna have to start supplying that.
I think it would
supply
be
water.
pretty, their plans are pretty soon. They've just about completed the sewer line that they were running, on Ross Church Road that crosses 401 and goes back to our big sewer line. And they put in a lot of water infrastructure and sewer infrastructure inside the development already. So they're definitely getting there, putting in streets and that sort of stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me within 6 months, they had quite a few vertical construction in there.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Appel or Mr. Royster, are you going to talk about the library leases?
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, I'm going to sub in on this. As you know, with the consolidation of the library systems throughout the county that each of the municipalities had, as well as the county had, that took place August 1st. So what we're looking to do here with these leases is to essentially just enter into leases specifically with the towns of Anger, Irwin, and Coates for the use of the existing library facilities as part of that agreement consolidation. They maintained ownership of the buildings, so we just need to get a lease on those buildings so we can continue providing services in their current location. I came to you all, I believe it was a couple meetings ago, just discussing that it was going to be a fairly standard, commercial lease. And that's what we have here. Just some of the highlights is that we're going to be looking to lease these facilities for 3 years with automatic 3-year renewals thereafter. The rent will be $0 per year. However, we will take over payment of utilities for the leased space. When it comes to Anger and Irwin, those are shared buildings. So similar to what we have done with a lot of our county buildings where we are, providing, utilities and shared spaces, we'll be paying the pro rata share of the utilities based on the square footage that we are leasing from the towns. As it relates to Coates, we will be taking over that entire building. So we will be taking over all of the utilities for that space, and we'd be placing those utilities in our name. With regards to improvements to the lease space, according to the terms of the lease, we are authorized to make improvements to that lease space for the continued operation, improvement, and health and safety of library operations and Harnett County citizens. That will be done in conjunction, obviously, with the towns, since it is their building. And wanting to be good neighbors and good tenants, we're wanting to get their buy-in on that type of thing. But the discussions we've had with municipalities up to this point in time, it's been a very smooth working process and has been an easy transition. So I'm asking today that this be placed on the next week's agenda for approval for the leases for Anger, Coates, and Irwin, and then as we get more information on Dunn, that will be forthcoming. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions about this? Have the municipalities approved this contract?
I know Anger has, and we have signature back from Anger. Irwin was looking to.
Ours should be less than first.
Okay.
Irwin problem with it. We got it after our last meeting. So.
Okay. And then I believe Coates has that on an upcoming meeting. It's just the way the business meetings fell. For a lot of these, is going to be in the later part of August, but I don't anticipate any problems with approval from Irwin, Coates, and Anger.
Any questions concerning these leases? If there's no consensus of the board, we'll move this to the consent agenda for approval on Monday.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, sir. All right, Mr. Appel.
Okay. So here to discuss the animal services ordinance. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights of the major changes in the ordinance, and then we can open it up for the public input. I'll handle it however y'all want to do it. I can address any comments afterwards, after everyone has a chance to speak. I know I've been reviewing emails that have been coming in, so I've seen a lot of comments so far. But I'll just start with by going over my changes and, like I said, the highlights. And as you'll see throughout this, there's a number of changes, but a lot of it's just cleaning up, changing titles, and whatnot. So I'm not going to go over those kinds of things. And also, I moved some items around, so it's not that they were deleted. I just moved it around for flow. So first major change, page 8, under that section 4, subsection E, just clarifying that for the appeal process for any civil citation, so civil matter just has nothing to do with any criminal charges, but any civil citation is issued, the appeal process is going to be that they can appeal to the General Services Director who will review the matter, except for those dealing with public nuisances and the dangerous dogs. Those have their own separate appeal process. And I'll go over, review that process here in a minute. So moving on to section 6 was animal control offenses. So number 5, vicious animals. So a lot of changes were made to that to be compliant with NCGS 138-200, and that under that statute it requires the health director to deem an animal vicious. So that change has been made to update it to be compliant with state statute that will put that in the hands of John Rouse. All right, the next section, public nuisance, has been changed. So the current ordinance states that it takes 2 or more times or combination of 2 or more of the following acts that were listed. I've changed that because certain situations should require more occurrences. Some could just be 1. So taking out that 2 or more, and then for each actually offense, it would dictate when it would be deemed a public nuisance. So as you see, number 1, habitually or repeatedly without provocation chases, snaps at, attacks, or otherwise molest pedestrians, bicyclists, motor vehicle passengers, farm, livestock, and domestic animals. Now, since this went out in the packet, I made one additional change. I made the board aware of it, but for the public purposes, there was confusion over the leaving the property versus being on the property. So if the dog leaves or animal leaves the property and chases, snaps at, attacks, and molest pedestrian, bicyclists, and so on, if they leave the property, it can be a public nuisance. Now, if they're animals on the property and there is a legal a person that lawfully enters the owner's property and then that animal chases, snaps at, attacks, or otherwise molests them, then it can be deemed a public nuisance, except again if the animal is restrained by a pen, fence, or other secure enclosure. So what that would apply to, for example, delivery drivers who come on property just to ensure, if the animal habitually or without provocation keeps chasing those kinds of individuals, it can be deemed a public nuisance. Otherwise, it does require the animal to come off the property. 2, damages the real, and this would just be a 1 occurrence, but damages the real personal property of anyone other than its owner or person in possession, including but not limited to turning over garbage pails, damaging gardens, flowers, shrubbery, trees, gates, and so on. So we did, if you'll see in number 4, did eliminate habitually or continuously barks, whines, or howls in excess of nature. The reason why we took that out is just due to the volume of calls that we get for that, considering with all the new subdivisions we're getting in here, it's becoming an issue of being able to enforce barking or noise and so on. Now, doesn't mean HOAs can't control that. I know they have a lot of in their own rules regarding that, but we decided to take that out just because trying to focus on the major issue. So we did take that out. Number 3 is no change. 4, we changed to habitually walks on or sleeps on automobiles of another person. Again, shouldn't take 1 or 2 times if an animal or cat sleeps on a vehicle to deem it a public nuisance. So we wanted to make it habitual, that it's a continuing problem. 5 wasn't changed. 6, again, added habitually, repeatedly eliminates on private property without permission of that property owner. Again, needs to be more than 1 or 2 occasions if an animal is eliminating on their property. And then took out number 10, just because if the number 1 will generally handle this, I don't think we need to deem an animal a public nuisance if it actually stays on the property and doesn't go after anyone. So subsection B under there, determining violations. So an animal control officer, animal services manager, or law enforcement officer who observes it can provide an abatement order for them to get in compliance within 24 hours or such lesser time as designated in the notice. If those individuals don't observe it, they can receive a written complaint, much like a dangerous dog, which will then be investigated, and if found to be true, we'll issue, again, an order of abatement. If they fail to abate the violation, the animal services manager shall notify the owner or person in possession in writing that the animal may be impounded and a civil penalty may be issued and or a criminal summons. And if they fail to comply, the animals can be forced to be removed from the county. Also, subsequent violations, the animal services manager may impound an animal if a third verified violation occurs within 1 year of any previous violation. Now, number 5, again, this is the right of appeal, so it's going to follow along the dangerous dog appeal right. So they can appeal to the general services director, who will make a determination. If the owner or person in possession is unhappy with that, they can appeal to the dangerous dog committee. And if these changes are adopted, we'll amend the bylaws of the dangerous dog committee to allow it to hear appeals for public nuisances. All right, so moving on. So number 10, the tethering violation. I know that's been a source of contention on actual tethering. However, we did leave that in there just due to, again, the nature of this county, the size of it, the history of this county. It's a common practice. However, while they're tethered, to ensure some protections for the animal. Didn't make a lot of changes to that. That's always been in there regarding the types of chains and length, and swivels have to be attached and so on. So that actually has not been changed. That's always been in there, that they be provided adequate food, water, and shelter, and so on. Now, the subsection C, we did make an exception in there. We did add in there for hunting dogs that more than 3 can be tethered on the property at any given time, just due to hunting is a popular activity in this county. We do have a lot of hunting dogs, so wanted to provide an exception for them. As you see, number 9, that was deleted out there, but that's only because we have a dangerous dog section, so that doesn't eliminate any protections under dangerous dog. It's just a cleanup matter. All right, rabies control, page 15, the section 7. So we updated that section to be compliant with NCGS 130A-196, Article 6, or sorry, 130A, Article 6. Again, one of the main things, we added ferret because dogs, cats, and ferrets have to be immunized for rabies, and also updated language regarding that the health director has to be involved in the rabies matters, and regarding having them being placed on a property that is accessible to the health director during the quarantine period. So all that section has just been updated really to be compliant with the statute regarding the health director's role. As you'll see as it goes on, again, all those changes are just to make it up to date. Section 8, rabies vaccination tag. So by statute 138-190, it does require dogs to wear a rabies vaccine tag at all times. However, it gives a county that adopts its own ordinance the option whether to require cats and ferrets to have a tag. Internal discussions, we decided to make that optional for cats and ferrets, considering that I know none of them don't wear tags, again, enforcement matter, but they do obviously have to be able to provide proof of vaccination upon request by animal control officer or animal services manager. So they do have to comply. They just don't have to wear the tags at all time. Anyways, I know all that's red line, but actually nothing else has really been changed. It's just because I moved the sections around. Moving on to dangerous dog, section 9. As you'll see under subsection C, I added the killed or inflicted severe injury upon a domestic animal when not on the owner's real property as a way to deem a dog potentially dangerous. That has always been in the statute. We never had it in our ordinance, so now we've just included in the ordinance that you have 3 ways to be able to deem a dog potentially dangerous. So that's just throwing that language in there. Now, one thing we did do in the appeal process, as you noticed with the public nuisance, so before we had a general services appointed review committee that handled the original review of a dangerous dog and potentially dangerous, and then based on that decision can go to the dangerous dog committee for an appeal. For efficiency purposes, because I know we have problems getting that group together in a timely manner and then rendering a decision, have eliminated that to just make it the general services director will make that initial determination, and then that decision can be appealed to the dangerous dog committee. Again, NCGS 67-4.1 allows a county to either designate an individual or a board to do that first determination. So it's compliant if we're just changing from a committee to just the general services director. And then under procedure, so we cleaned up who can file a report. So witness of an alleged dangerous dog or potentially dangerous dog, including animal control officer, law enforcement officer, victim, or victim of an alleged dangerous dog. So they can file a request to deem the dog dangerous or potentially dangerous. One thing I also wanted to make clear for that has been confusion of the practice. So if the dog is deemed dangerous or potentially dangerous, the owner or person in possession can appeal to the dangerous dog committee. If the dog is not deemed dangerous or potentially dangerous by general services director, the alleged victim, witness, or whatnot, they cannot appeal because their property rights are not being affected in this situation. The victim has other remedies. They can file a civil lawsuit to recover damages. But the point of an appeal in dealing with dangerous dogs is you're affecting a property right because animals under the law are property. And so a witness or victim, their property rights are not being affected, so they don't have a right to appeal. Let's see. All right, moving on, again, a little further on page 21. Just want to focus on the violation. So one thing we had to do that's required by statute is to clarify what the penalties are. So did clarify that violation of it is a class 3 misdemeanor. So just wanted to clarify what the penalty is. Moving on to the violations of conditions. So we have updated the new procedures for violations of dangerous dog conditions. So upon the finding of violation, they can be seized, and we would provide a notice of intent to euthanize. Once that intent to euthanize has been issued, they can appeal because, again, we're dealing with destroying a property. So they do have rights to appeal, but otherwise we will euthanize the animal. And then, again, on subsection C down there, clarified the penalty. Owner or person in possession of a dog that's been deemed dangerous or potentially dangerous that attacks a person and causes physical injuries requiring medical treatment in excess of $100 shall be guilty of a class 1 misdemeanor. And again, clarifying number D, regardless, the individual still has civil remedies to pursue against the owner or person in possession of that animal. Moving on to section 11, retention animals. We did add a section on there that if you're going to redeem the animal, we do need proof that you are the owner or person in possession. So just laid out the various ways of proof that you can provide to ensure, so that we know we're releasing that animal back to the appropriate individual. Section, 12, inherently dangerous wild and exotic animals has been updated. So so this section's, a lot of it's been deleted, but that's because we've defined it in the definition section of what wild and exotic animals are. So it hasn't really changed what's in the current ordinance regarding the prohibition against inherently dangerous wild and exotic animals. And then moving on again, section 13, again, going over penalties. So again, clarifying penalties and that notwithstanding any civil penalties outlined herein, any person violating a provision of the ordinance constitutes a misdemeanor and shall be punishable as provided in North Carolina General Statute 14-4. Did not lay out the actual class because that has changed quite a bit. So just refer to the actual penalty that's in 14-4. And that each continuing day violation shall constitute a separate offense. And lastly, I'll point out on Section 16, application to municipalities. I've already had some discussions with the managers and mayor of the towns. I know this is going to be an issue, so happy to take it out if the board so chooses. But essentially, it says that we don't have authority to enforce this ordinance in the municipalities unless the municipality either adopts our ordinance or we enter into an interlocal agreement to enforce their ordinance. I do have there that that their ordinance shall not be inconsistent with the terms of this ordinance. Now, currently, what we have is an interlocal agreement in which we provide enforcement. There have been some issues that we're working through. This is actually step one of this process. We're going to look at the municipal ordinances and our interlocal agreement to bring it up to date to ensure proper enforcement. But I know the feedback I've already gotten regarding that last sentence, that won't be inconsistent. The municipalities don't want to adopt our ordinance because they would enforce some other things that I agree are probably appropriate for a municipality that isn't appropriate for a county such as, I know, chickens, roosters, things of that nature, which that's normal in a rural county, but I know in a municipality it's not. So I left it in there just so you could see the change. However, again, if we want to take that out, I completely understand, but with the understanding that any municipal ordinance will ensure that any municipality we're providing service for, that their ordinance, the municipal ordinances, are the same, so that way our officers are not having to review 4 or 5 different ordinances. That gets real confusing. So we just need to ensure that if we strike this language and they have their own ordinance, we just want to make sure it stays consistent amongst all the municipalities. So I think I've gone over enough probably at this point, but if there's any questions, otherwise, again, we can open it up for public comment. And again, I'm happy to address any other comments that come up during that course. So.
Mr. Pell, I do have one question. That was on a change that I guess in section 6A1, under where the addition was made for while on the owner's or person in possession's property and anyway, persons lawfully entering the owner's or person's property. And I know you gave the example of a delivery driver. I almost feel like that's something that we need to define out a little more clearly as to what would be lawful entry onto a person's property. For me, I could see some issues arising.
Right. Right, and I thought about that with perhaps the best is to maybe provide examples because it's hard to account for every lawful individual that comes on. Obviously, your common ones are obviously delivery drivers or any other contractor that there's an agreement that they come on, a friend, family, all those kinds of things. You have obviously a myriad of people who can lawfully enter a property at maybe another official of the county or some other government agency. So I can maybe work on the wording. Maybe the best thing to do is provide lawfully some examples, but would not be limited to those to help assist in that kind of a thing. But I'll look at that section.
And there may not be an easy answer for that, but I just I think that could definitely create some gray area, if you will, the way I look at it.
I understand. But we did add that because, again, with the audience, I know this isn't in there. in the packet because that was a change I made because there was confusion over that. The whole idea is if they go off the property and chase and so on, that can be habitually public nuisance. If they're on their own property, they can still, we wanted to make a difference there because they're on their property. So it comes with the territory. However, we just don't want people who are coming on to do their jobs and so on to be harassed. So the whole idea is that's why we can deem it a public nuisance even if they're on their property.
Kind of like the old adage, you can chase a dog home, but you can't chase him away from home. That's his home, or her home.
Any other questions for Mr. Appel? Okay. All right, it's 10:45. I will, we will start the public input session. We have 30 minutes. That means we will finish up at 11:15. Before we begin that, we're here to talk about, and I hope you will confine your comments to the ordinance, the animal control ordinance. We're not here to talk about the shelter, although we understand how important that is. I think you saw earlier today, we're taking it seriously. We're not here to talk about how the animal control personnel do or do not perform. We want to talk about strictly what's in the ordinance and the changes and any recommended changes to that ordinance. With that being said, Ms. Kemp, would you like to begin your talk?
Good morning. My name is Ronnie Kemp. I'm the founder of Rise and Shine Pitbull Rescue. You've listened to me speak dozens of times about animal welfare, requesting an animal services advisory board to actively engage on issues exactly like this one. Today, I will address the bare minimum approach Harnett County has repeatedly adopted when it comes to protecting animals in this community. Bare minimum funding for animal services, bare minimum staffing and pay, bare minimum standards required by our ordinance, bare minimum notice given to the public about this meeting, bare minimum public involvement and time allotted to provide feedback. I'm sure you will all agree, the bare minimum effort at anything has never led to excellence. Our animal control ordinance is the only enforceable tool in existence that regulates protections for animals at the local level. Since a chance to revise the ordinance only takes place every 4 to 6 years, it seems foolish to rush through this process. Time and time again, our animal control officers report feeling handicapped by our outdated, ineffective ordinance, unable to properly enforce it. Well, here we are with a rare chance to change that. At bare minimum, we should be consulting with other counties, you can see in my visual aid, who are brave enough to make animal welfare a core issue. You'll see in the packet I prepared, these counties in North Carolina, Harnett is not unique, are enacting a wave of more substantial ordinances, suggesting that we are in the midst of a shift in the way our society views and protects animals. To move beyond the bare minimum, Harnett County must prohibit animal fighting, authorize neglected animals to be immediately impounded, not make them wait an agonizing 72 hours, enact spay and neuter as an adoption requirement, also for dogs found running at large or determined dangerous. We need to put in place restrictions on tethering in extreme weather, under inhumane conditions, or when an animal's body condition score is less than a 3. If someone is determined to tether their dog, allow them to apply for a permit, proving their animals are vaccinated, sterilized, and otherwise well taken care of. The goal here is not to add more work to our already overloaded officers, but to give them a serious, effective tool to use. We desperately need standards that are clear, that create clear expectations for pet owners and allow our officers to actually enforce them. safely protecting animals always, and seizing them when necessary. You should be asking for these things too. These are things that will help prevent the never-ending cycle of stray pets, after-hours emergency calls, and reckless owners. Yes, the revisions needed will take more time, more discussion, and more effort, and yes, maybe even more staff. But like I told Mr. Blevins, the right thing and the hardest thing are often the same thing. I would like to remind you, you've encouraged all of this growth. Well, with that, you are going to continue to face a tidal wave of complaints related to the substandard conditions currently allowable by our out-of-date and out-of-touch ordinance. The animals of this community deserve more than the bare minimum protections. The officers, they deserve more than the bare minimum support. The general public who rely on the services of this department, they deserve more than the bare minimum response. And despite the odds against me, I stand before you again and again, refusing to lower my standards until you agree to raise yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kemp. Kathy Brown.
Kathy Brown, I live in Anger, and since you've limited at the beginning of that what we could say, and it has to stay within about the ordinance, I'm here in support of those that are advocating for the betterment of the animals in Harnett County. There was a call out to show up, so I'm here. And since we can't talk about the shelter, I was pleased to see earlier your interest in asking questions, entertaining, at least for show, if that's what it was, about the future of the new shelters. Thank you.
Thank you. Melanie Hamilton.
Hello. Well, the ordinances definitely put a slant, but the young man failed to mention that if even you have your animal tethered outside, normal human being can't sustain what was going on in the weather today, and we have a 98-point temperature. He failed to recognize that animals have 101 to 106 temperature, plus they're wearing a fur coat. How long do you think it is before their brains start baking? That ordinance needs to be considered. A bowl of water to last all day till you get home is not going to save that dog. And if I happen to bring the bowl of water to them, I'm trespassing on his property, and I can be accused of trespassing, okay? But you're going to put that dog down because I tried to give him a water? You're going to euthanize him because he bit at me? Wouldn't you be biting if you were 106 in a fur coat and somebody tried to approach you? All right, that being said, the shelter idea is obsolete. 2% in the next 10 years. Homelessness will increase 49% in the next 4 years. Any economics will back that up. That's a lot of surrendered, abandoned, and dumped animals. You're talking about today, you're talking about in the next 5 years. This time next year, we will be overrun with animals, cats and dogs. We are picking up as rescues what the shelter cannot handle. Not their fault, but you ask a rescue what needs to be done. You ask a foster parent who's paying out of their pocket to take care of what the county can't handle. Yeah, we're going to grow. But think of this, most pet owners have 2 to 3 animals. When they lose their job, where is that animal going? That's it. It's in a nutshell. It can't wait. Yeah, we can euthanize them all. Spay and neuter is the only answer. It's the beginning to the resolution. Thank you.
Ms. Dyer.
Good morning. My name's Melinda Tyre, and I am a volunteer for Project J, 501c3. I also do a lot of community outreach myself. Ronnie Kemp, what she just said, everything's true. and your comment going on somebody's property. Um, I do that. I do it in the right way. I try to make friends with the owner, and that dog might not have water, that dog might not have shelter. I go and I offer, do you need a dog house? You know, there's ways to go to somebody without just going on their property, yes, blah, 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 blah. But when I go by a location every day, I know there's one dog that has died on a chain. We provided that dog 2 dog houses, shavings in the winter, anything that dog needed. Then the owner will start saying, we don't need your help. They were offered a dog pen to get that dog off a chain. No, they didn't want that. So now that dog's gone. They have another dog there on a chain. So I'm thinking anything that can be changed to get a dog off a teether would be greatly appreciated to us dog people, but mostly the animal. And I'm not just saying dogs, I'm saying all animals, but I mainly deal with dogs. I help with other things too. All of us rescue people. We give, we donate, we help one another. I've got 3 dog houses in my yard right now. Hey, do you need a dog house? Yeah, I'm going in your yard. If I see your dog with no water, if I see your dog with a short chain, I'm going on your yard and I'm going on your property and I'm going to talk to you about that dog. If it puts me in jail, hey, at least I'm doing my part and trying to help an animal. And because we are their voices. I mean, what's people doing in this world today up in Raleigh? You know, they want their rights. Well, the animals wants their rights too, and we are here to help them. And that's all I got to say. And Mr. Blevins, I would just love to see the new shelter. I hope that one day that this earth's still here for all of us people that loves animals to see it.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. Again, please keep your comments to the ordinances. I understand the passion. I'm not disagreeing with you, okay? I can't stand to see an animal abused. But let's keep on subject. Let's talk about the ordinances, please. Chalet, Pico, sorry.
So, I'm a professional pet sitter for Harnett County. I'm an LLC, and I've been in business for over 7 years. And I am very blessed that all of my clients obviously they're paying me to take care of their pets. But in my years of duty, I have seen a lot of the neglect that these people are talking about. And so I mainly came here because I had volunteered for a little while at the animal shelter, but it didn't work for me because of my schedule. I mainly came here because I wanted to find out more about the rights of the animals, because I do see a lot of the abuse. I do see the tethered dogs out there in the freezing weather, and nobody even cares about that dog, and they don't have water, like what they said. So I mainly just wanted to find out what I could do more to help the animals in our community. And I do see a lot of, because we do, not to blame, but people do leave, and whether they're homeless or not, sometimes they just don't want to be bothered to find a place for the dog. They don't want to pay the adoption fee just to drop the dog off. So I would like to let people who's ever here know that I'm available to see what I can do to help. If you just reach out to me, my company's All Things Pets. I'm not trying to promote business. I'm also an animal aromatherapist. I try to help the animals emotionally as well. So if I can be of service, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Rachel Ray Webb.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for taking my comment. I have lived in Harnett County since 1994, and I have called the animal control several times for several reasons. And in this information, I think my biggest question is, who is going to be accountable for this director? Who keeps this director in tow? Who keeps them doing their job? Because I have taken many pictures, many videos, many calls to animal control. A shelter is, folks, a tree, could be 50 feet tall, 100 feet tall, pine tree. You know, that shade moves around. That dog is under that tree because that's considered shelter. Under the freezing cold, icy storm weather, no shelter, no doghouse, no nothing. I videoed, I take pictures, I send, I call animal control. It's after hours and they're not coming. Who's going to be accountable for all these rules and regulations? That's my thing. Tethering has to be out. You guys, please don't vote on this today. I'm asking you in your personal time to look at other counties and what they have. You are leading, you are growing, you want Harnett County to be a wonderful group place. This is your time, folks, to make these rules and regulations to promote a leading person protecting animals and being their voices. We have to have a definition of a shelter. What is the definition of a shelter? That's my question. A 50-foot pine tree, that's a definition of a shelter. It's true. It's true. My other thing is, God made us in his image so that we might take care of the animals. Are we taking care of the animals in Harnett County? Saving one dog will not change the world and will not change Harnett County. But surely for that one dog, the world will be changed forever. I urge you to be the voice of these tethered dogs under a pine tree of shelter and be their voice and be a spokesperson and work for the Lord and be that caretaker and that voice for the animals. They don't deserve this at all. And I need somebody, I have to be accountable for everything I do. Who's accountable? Who's going to be accountable? I have to call animal control, and they do nothing.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. I understand the problems you've had. I've had similar problems, but we want to talk about the ordinances. Thank
but
you
if the ordinance were clear
thank you, ma'am.
and
Appreciate
one
your
worded, it would be
comments.
helpful.
Mr. Jeffries?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kent Jeffries. I live at 747 Purfoy Road, Fuquay, in Harnett County. Tomorrow, 67 years ago, I was born here in Harnett County. Been here all my life, raised on a farm. Things have changed in those 67 years. When I was growing up on the farm, we had farm dogs, let them run out, cow dogs. People, just let them run. My perspective on animal control and animal welfare has changed dramatically in those 67 years. Mr. Bernard, with the company that's doing the survey, talked about back in 1940 you had your dog pounds, very minimal requirements. People nowadays expect and deserve much more than those bare minimums. This animal control ordinance, the update, I'm sure Mr. Appel was challenged to bring it in compliance with what's allowed under North Carolina general statutes. And it's updated, appears mainly with job titles and things like that. but it appears to have been done in a vacuum without any input from people like Ms. Kemp and others who are concerned. They're likely, and I don't know, this is Mr. Appel's venue, how much further the county can go beyond what is required by general statutes. But tethering and other things, I think this ordinance needs to be put on hold. An Animal Services Advisory Committee formed with concerned citizens willing to serve and provide input to update this document, to present to you as input from the citizens, not just from your county legal staff, looking at it in a vacuum. Funding. This is tie in to animal services because there's about 25 pages of substance in this thing, but it has as much value as my grocery shopping list yesterday. If you don't have the resources available to enforce what is in this ordinance and the facility to allow the seizure and impoundment of animals that are found to not be in compliance with the requirements. It's interesting that Mr. Ward was here, and I have a tremendous amount. I wish he was here because I've known of Steve Ward since Harnett County first decided to implement county water over 30 years ago. I have a tremendous amount of respect for his judgment, for his input, and for his advice. You have a potential revenue source in selling that Fuquay Water District with a one-time infusion of cash that will help fund some of these things. And when you go back and look at this, what's going to be proposed for a new animal services facility, your first impulse is going to be, this is too expensive. We can't afford that. What can we cut out of that? Resist that urge. Lastly, I urge all the citizens of the Everett Commissioner District to hold future candidates accountable and make this a central issue in their campaigns. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Did the Longmans leave? Okay. Well, that's everyone that signed up. We still have a few minutes. If there's someone that wants to speak about the ordinances, please come forward.
My name is Margaret Morton, 86 Gwendolyn Way, Fuquay, Harnett County. I would like to reiterate the need for tethering and also shelter. I'm so confused over the comment you made that excessive barking should be handled by HOAs. I've been on the board of our HOA, and clearly we can send letters. We cannot enforce the law. I had, for 4 years, 2 German Shepherds as a neighbor, and I have a YouTube video recorded of it, barking nonstop. I called animal control twice. Once was for the well-being of the dogs who were in 0-degree weather during an ice storm. As long as they had a little piece of wood to go under, frozen water, some kibble, there's nothing they could do. We had to get noise machines to be able to sleep at night while the other 3 pups were in the house, well taken care of. Nothing was able to be done. Tethering. I have another neighbor who actually has the dog on a 6-foot leash or chain attached to a doghouse. We had a tornado warning. We had a windstorm. Maybe it was even the time we had a hurricane come through. The dog went up in the air. There's nothing that can be done. This tethering is archaic. I've lost count how many permanent lots we have now coming. And we have all these folks coming. Do you think they're going to be happy with these ordinances? You think you have work now cut out for yourselves. Once they start seeing what the animal ordinances are and how archaic they are compared to other counties around us, they're going to speak up. So please do the right thing, table this for now, get an advisory board to help out, carve these ordinances out. You have plenty of experts, animal rescues. Ronnie Kemp has been tireless in advocating for the animals of this county. Please table it for now, get an advisory board, and help craft this, the revisions to the ordinances. Please, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Susan Shattuck. I live in Coates. I've been here since 2012 rescuing cats from the Harnett County Shelter and from the streets. And I've been on the board of Facilitate Rescue since 2017. We were formed in 2017 specifically to rescue cats from the Harnett County Shelter. We have since moved out into the community too, but we do have some experience and knowledge of animal issues in this county. I want to thank shelter management and thank county management for being willing to look into some more progressive actions with regard to the animals in this county. As far as the ordinance goes, there are some really glaring omissions. One thing I would suggest that you consider is licensing animals, because it's, number one, it's a source of considerable revenue. Number two, it's a source of resolution of some of the incredible problems that we're seeing and that we're going to continue to see as this county grows. And I would like to suggest that you consider imposing a fee on breeders who refuse to have their animals spayed and neuters, and on anybody basically who refuse to have their animals spayed and neuters, because again, it's a source of revenue, and again, it's a source of resolution of the problems. I think that there definitely should be a citizens advisory board. I definitely think that this ordinance should be tabled until the citizens advisory board has had the opportunity to consider all of the things that are missing from this ordinance. The county needs low-cost spay and neuter desperately, and the county doesn't have to fund it, but the county does have to support it. And if the county supported it, there would be a lot fewer animals running stray and a lot fewer people calling the shelter all the time for help that they can't get because the shelter doesn't have enough staff and the shelter doesn't have enough funding. And backyard breeders, I didn't hear anything about them in the ordinance. Fighting dogs, I didn't really hear anything about that in the ordinance. And as far as tethering, pretty much everybody who's involved with the animals on a one-to-one basis knows that tethering is a really horrible practice, and hunting dogs notwithstanding, it's a practice that should be stopped. I wanted to say that I agree with every single thing that Ronnie Kemp said, and I hope that the board will take into consideration some of the things that have been suggested here today and implement them for the animals' sake and for our sakes too. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, at this time, I'm going to close the input. And Mr. Pell, I think you may have some clarification on some of the comments that were made.
So I'll start off by saying that this is definitely not a rush job on my part. I've been reviewing this for a while now, receiving comments, had multiple discussions with Barry and Larry on this end. So it's not just getting the legal update on it, it's also how they're handling things out there and what they're seeing. So I've tried my best, obviously, keep that in mind. Now, I appreciate all the comments today and all the emails. I would say I think there are some probably good points that I'm happy to add in. I don't think this is going to be the final version, just while we have the input. But a few things I'll address. So the spay and neuter, I wrote down a list I heard. So spay and neutering before adoption. So I know that when the animal becomes ours, so surrendered or whatnot, can't find the owner, that we do spay and neuter these animals before they go back out. Or as much as possible, sorry. As much as we possibly can. Now, I have received comments regarding that if a dog is at large or animal at large, we pick them up, the spay and neuter the animal. I'm not a fan of that idea, because one animal that gets loose one time and we pick them up and spay and neuter it when we don't know, it could be potentially a breeding dog or it's not a problem animal. I would hate to, again, we're affecting, I don't want to sound crass, but we're affecting property rights. So I want to be careful with that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but you said as much as possible. So are we talking about, like, if we have an animal that's being adopted that goes out, not every animal is being spayed and neutered that's going out the door?
Every animal should be spayed and neutered.
Okay, can you, what are the reasonings on why that's not happening then? Like,
There's no,
funding?
the access that the shelter has to spay and neuter animals is outside access. There's no internal spay and neuter program. It's all being coordinated through volunteers and outside efforts.
So we don't have funds allocated for spay and neuter program. It's one of our goals. What we do, and so some of those that go out, we have support from NC State, the veteran school, the veterinary school. So those we try to run through. We have a lot of help units transported up there, but essentially we don't have a budget for the spay and neuter program itself. One of the things we want to do is the eye care program, which you all should be familiar with. You see the eye care on the back of the license. That's for low-income persons. So when the board approved our position to start in September, that was one of the administrative support. That was one of the programs that we're going to try to initiate, which is try to get money back from eye care program. So we are looking for ways to do it.
Yeah, a lot of comments have been, heard a lot of comments regarding tethering. Now, as part of my review, I have reviewed other ordinances. I've seen it. Some do get rid of tethering. Others still have tethering with restrictions, which we do have tethering restrictions. Part of it for leaving in there, again, just from an enforcement perspective, it is a tough ask considering the rural county, very large county, has a tough ask to completely ban it. So our opinion is best practice is to put restrictions on it. Now, we do require, per our ordinance, we do require adequate water, shelter. It must be for a period of time and conditions that are not harmful to the animal. So that is in there, that they cannot just be left out in 100-degree weather all day long. That is in the ordinance. Now, obviously we have to go out, that's separate from the enforcement side. What I'm focusing on is the ordinance, that is in the ordinance, that it can't be left out for a period of time that would harm or potentially harm the animal. And again, and going to the adequate shelter, that is fully defined in our ordinance. It's not just leaving it under the tree. It's on page 4. It's the longest definition we have in here. And again, it has to be out of direct sun, the temperature level that's helpful to the animal. Shall be in a windproof and moisture-proof structure, suitable size to accommodate the animal to allow retention of body heat. 4 walls, roof, solid floor raised up, and so on. So we fully define adequate shelter in this ordinance. Now, fighting, I've received a number of comments regarding animal fighting and the cruelty. Now, I have no issue putting in the prohibition on fighting. I think that's, I guess, a good idea, but I do want to give a reminder that this ordinance mostly governs civil matters that the animal control wants to be in charge of. It obviously has criminal penalties in there, but whether it's in this ordinance or not, it is against the law to have animal fighting. It is against the law to treat animals cruelly. So I don't have a problem putting in the ordinance, but I just want a reminder that regardless of whether it's in the ordinance, it is against the law, and we prosecute those. We don't write civil citations for cruelty. We don't write civil citations for fighting if it's found. They're charged, and that goes over, given to the DA to prosecute it, which obviously we don't have control over the DAs and what they prosecute and don't prosecute, but we do. So again, happy to put in, I think it's not a bad comment, but I just want to remind everyone that regardless, against the law. Excessive barking, have you get input from the board and whether to put that back in again. The reason being is, again, looking at this county, what we are, the growth, the size, and everything is trying to take into account and talking animal services, and so trying to focus on what really animal welfare on all that. So barking animals is a tough one to police. It is very tough. I know it's taxing on that department, and so we can put it back in, but it's the reason why that's the reason why it was removed. So I'll just leave it at that. And so licensing animals, leave that up to the board, but that's a tough ask, again, to keep up with licensing of all the animals in this county. Again, easier probably for a municipality to do something like that. tough proposition for something in a county to license animals. Just the manpower and everything that's required, the oversight, again, that's a tough thing. But I will leave it up to the board whether that's something to look at. Licensing animals is not a big ordinance I reviewed. Some do have it, but it's not a big thing. It's not everywhere. Like I said, it may be more in the municipalities, which is easier to regulate. So again, I was going through the emails and Ms. Kemp, I do appreciate your comments. Again, I think I was going to go back through and probably make a few tweaks to some of the things, but I will say that a lot of things are covered. Again, the legal department is the one that has to defend this ordinance in court. And so the language that's in here, and I know some of the comments that we need to throw in additional language, I believe it is covered. I'll go back through, but I believe it's just a matter of opinion. But when I review it legally, a lot of this language is covered in an ordinance. It's just a matter of being able to enforce it. So, one other thing I want to point out, because it's pointed out in Cumberland County, that if regarding an owner that's deemed to, I believe, have a nuisance animal, or they had abused it, and requiring that animal, all other animals that they have, to be turned over and to ban them from any ownership for 3 years after that. I'm really shocked that's in any ordinance. I very fully believe that is illegal, that you cannot require animals that are not mistreated to be turned over and then to ban them from ownership. So I just want to point out that I could not put anything in there. I couldn't sign off on something like that. So, but any other, as I think I tried to cover a majority of comments that were said here today, but if there's any other questions, happy to answer them.
Any other questions for Mr. Appel? I think, did you address the shelter issue? Don't we define shelter? What constitutes shelter?
Yes, so that's in here. Again, we define adequate shelter. I'll look back at it, but I believe our definition is fully adequate on adequate shelter. And again, the catch-all too is also, it's not just the shelter, but it's in conditions that are not harmful to the health and safety of the animal. So there is a catch-all provision that covers a lot of these. That's why I say is you don't have to overwork something when you have conditions that affect the health and safety of an animal. Covers a lot of things. So I believe that it is fully covered. As I said, if I'm defending in court, I feel very comfortable with it.
Mr. Chair, based on the public input we've received and Mr. Appel's comments about going back and looking and doing some tweaking, I would recommend that we move this to the September 13th work session for continued discussion, and give you some time to work through, give us some time to look at this information that Ms. Kemp provided us, as well as take into account some of the emails that information and emails we've received as well. That'd be my recommendation.
Also, I just want to point out one other thing too. It's a good point. I'd point out the impoundment and seizure. I'm going to review that. I think Ms. Kemp and some others provided some good feedback on that. I'm going to tweak some of that language too. That was a good comment as well, that I'm going to maybe tighten up some of the language. So,
Any opposition to moving this to the September 13th work session?
No, I have no issue with that. I would like to call Ms. Kemp up just for a few questions before we finish this, if you don't mind. Just.
Is it something that?
Well, I feel that since we're sitting here addressing this, Ms. Kemp has kind of turned into the spokesperson, as you would say. So I just have. We're up here going over the ordinance, and we're trying to figure out exactly what in there, how to outline it. So I would like to ask her for some examples and kind of recommendations on exactly these issues that she's brought up. Like if she can put in some input on kind of where to steer that, or what does she see and what is she after?
Okay, is that something that could be done with email to the commissioners?
I'll make it. I'd like to hear.
Is the board opposed to letting Ms. Kemp speak? Just, I know, I mean, I don't want to keep it going on too much, but I'm fine.
What are
Okay.
you saying?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you recommending? That she speak?
No, I would like to ask her to come up and like as the topic of animal fighting in the ordinance, what recommendations or examples would you like to see in there? And then same thing for the spay and neuter requirements. I mean, is there a certain verbiage that, you know, would be that you see or that you hear that you feel
Yeah,
would be
I'm absolutely
adequate?
happy to try and help come up with some ideas. I mean, I looked at 4 other counties: Forsyth, Craven, Cumberland, and Halifax. Forsyth actually worked with an organization called Forever Friends, and this is what they do. They work with counties in the Triad to help improve their ordinances. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There's resources available to help us if we want to do better with our ordinance. Some of the things that I think would be most important, like the immediate impoundment, I think is huge. Right now, I'll give you an example just so you know what that means. Animal control officer gets a call on a Friday. It's about to snow, so they go out, they see an animal who's tied outside. It's in not good conditions, it's not safe. They're technically required to leave a 72-hour notice for the owner to contact them back. So now we're waiting 3 days. In the meantime, it's snowing, sleeting, cold, that animal's suffering. I think being able to immediately impound the animal in a situation like that would give our officers a ton of empowerment in the field. I know that there's some loose language in there right now about, based on their, recommendation or what they observe, but I don't think that they feel that way. And I don't know where that disconnect is happening, but that's the feedback that I get often when calls are made about situations like that. The animal fighting, I think, is just, I understand that it's not like a civil matter, but I do think that if we're going to be putting out information to the public about what we find acceptable and unacceptable, I think animal fighting should be included. It is a problem in this area. It's something that is often kind of under the radar, but I do think just making a statement to the public that this is not going to be tolerated in any materials that we put out about animal welfare, it's just wise. I understand that there's like a legal side to all of that would be handled by the sheriff's department. And I think that's a whole nother avenue that probably needs to be discussed. I don't know that there's the best coordination between our sheriff's office and animal services. Other things, I think when we're talking about shelter, our definition for shelter is not terrible, but I do think we need to specify that an animal needs adequate shade other than a doghouse. A doghouse turns into an oven in the summertime. It's not a place for an animal to seek shade or coolness or to get relief from the heat. I think they need to have another form of shade throughout the day, not just in the morning while they're under this tree. I think it needs to be a provision. Craven County added that in their last revision. There's also something called humanely clean conditions that I've seen used in a couple other ordinances more recently, where they're talking about the actual pen or the space that an animal is being kept outside. The area needs to be clean, the water needs to be clean, the food can't just be poured on the ground and covered in ants. It's those kind of minutia details, they matter. And the language that we use matters, and the way we talk to people, and the materials that we're putting out to the public. So those things are super important. Craven County gave a list of examples of inadequate shelter, so that they're not just defining what's acceptable, but they're defining what's not acceptable. Cardboard boxes, travel crates, kennels. These are not designed to be shelters for animals. They're temporary, and they're made to move an animal from one place to another. You can't, just take a dog crate and wrap it in a tarp and call that good enough. Let's see. There's sections about fenced area requirements, making sure that the fence is, made of chain link and 6 feet high, and, not just pieced together with welded pieces of wire that the animal's going to hurt themselves on. And, there's things that I think we could do to enhance what we've already got. I do think that the tethering restrictions is probably the number one area that we could work on. And I understand the concern that would be a big leap to go from where we are to a tethering ban. But I think there's steps we can start taking to protect the animals that are in the most at-risk situations. And some of that might be based on weather. This is all things that we can discuss, but I think body condition score would be a worthy avenue to pursue. It's not being done anywhere else, but that doesn't mean we can't do it. I mean, other counties are preventing animals less than 6 months or under a year old from being tethered. That seems like a basic requirement. It's not in ours. No ropes, no wire, no padlocks, no chains. I mean, we can get into the specifics if you're determined to keep tethering in the ordinance, which I think we need to evaluate that. But I also don't dislike the idea of asking people to apply for a tethering permit. You know, if they're really determined to tether their animal, you know, they can prove that their animal's been spayed and neutered. How many animals do we have right now that are being tethered and they're just continuing to reproduce litter after litter after litter because they're not protected? And I think that having animals who are being tethered required to be spayed and neutered it's not a tethering restriction, right? It's not telling people they can't tether their animals, but it's telling them that if they're going to, they have to take care of the animal that's at the end of the chain. It's not fair to the animal to keep doing this to them. There's also, I know there's some violation and penalty things I included in the packet from counties that are doing a really good job of outlining like what the penalty structure is for violations, so that the public knows what to expect if they get a notice and how it will escalate and when they stand to lose their animal. So, I mean, there's things in here. I put this together just kind of in the last week or two since I knew this was coming up, but I'd really like the opportunity to sit down and discuss this further in a committee type setting. I've asked for that. I think it would be beneficial. There's a lot of people in this room who have knowledge and experience that would be valuable when putting this stuff together. So that's really what I'm looking for.
Well, thanks for your input. I'm sorry to
Yeah.
go ahead but I appreciate that. I just want to go ahead and say, I mean, I don't think anybody on this board is, I'm not going to let it continue with a bunch of questions and everything, but I don't think anybody on this board is up for animal cruelty. I think we're all on the same page here. You know, it's not falling on deaf ears, but kind of as some people shouldn't be parents, some people shouldn't be animal owners is what it boils down to. And we can sit here and go through so many different restrictions and outline it, but I mean, what we may do with our pets and animals wouldn't even be close to what some people may do, you know, and for us to go and control that down to every detail, you know, it's kind of hard, but we're trying to implement as much as we possibly can. I really wish that more people cared about humans also the same way y'all do about animals, because, you know, you let an animal into your home but not a human being, you know, for certain other reasons, but that's here nor there. But thank y'all for everything y'all done. We are taking things into consideration. We're trying to get your input. That's what the reason for this was today. So I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me a few minutes.
Okay. We have the public comment period's over. I'm sorry. We have a recommendation from Commissioner Matthews that we move this to September the 13th work session. I would second that and ask the board for their agreement or non-agreement.
I would agree to that, but in the meantime, it seems like our attorney has said that he sees some changes that he might want to make in this ordinance. So I would suggest that if there are changes that you feel that needs to be changed and it's necessary to make changes, and some of the changes that you mentioned, I certainly agree with. And I certainly don't agree with leaving anything out to address the fact that dogfighting is illegal. And we should take a stand on that too. So if it's in order with your, Mr. Matthews' motion, I would add that to it, to give him a chance to make the changes that he feels like he needs to make in the ordinance.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's appropriate. So we will move this to the September 13th work session and have further discussion at that time. Okay. And now
is there a way we can help or get involved before that session?
you can talk to the commissioners or staff after the meeting. Okay. At this time, we'll move to item 14. We have recommendation for 3 people are applying for 2 vacancies on the Home and Community Care Block Grant Committee. Do I hear any comments, yea or nay, concerning these applications?
We have 2 people on District 1 we don't need, but
If I understand correctly, we have 2 people that were employees and on this board, and they have resigned, and they're asking to fill a civilian, if you will, position on these same boards.
There was one employee, and she was serving as the employee representative.
Who is that?
That was Miss Letitia Maynard.
Okay, so Ms. Maynard was a employee, and she resigned, or she no longer works for the...
Retired.
Yeah, she retired, and she wants to be a volunteer representative.
Yes. And Miss Diane Magnum was going to move up from the volunteer position to the older consumer position. And
So-
then Mr. Marvin Tony would represent the employee position.
So there are 3 people that are applying for 2 openings, is that correct?
Yes. What it ended up being was there was 1 vacancy, but once it's kind of like a reorganization of the board so that, they could move from, it's just kind of a reorganization. So it's like this, it would leave open, there was 1 vacancy, but then when Ms. Letitia Maynard retired, she
Mhm.
could no longer fill the position for the Harnett County representative. So they were just kind of moving a couple of people around and then filling that vacancy for the employee position.
Commissioner Johnson, do you know, let's see. I guess do you know Ms. Mangum?
Which one?
Do you know Diane Mangum?
I do not. Only one I see on here that I'm familiar with is Lemuel Black. It'd be District 2.
well,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? So, Ms. Capps, so, help me, all 3 of these were already on this board?
2 of them.
2 of them, okay. Ms. Maynard was on there as a Harnett County employee representative position.
Volunteer position. And then Miss Maynard, yes, I'm sorry, you're right.
Okay, and she is retired.
Yes.
And so, Ms. Mangum, who was in the volunteer position, has resigned. And so Ms. Maynard wants to go into that volunteer position on the same board, okay? And then Mr. Tony wants to go into the position that Ms. Maynard was in as the employee rep, okay? And so this older consumer position, was that a vacant position?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understand now, thank you.
So there'll be 1 vacancy left.
No vacancies after this.
Okay.
We also have 2 resignations here to approve.
So the 2 resignations that are transferring to reorging to another position, we have to approve the resignations as well first?
Yep. What, I think so, yeah. So what's the wishes of the board?
Well, I think that since these this District 1, District 2 positions, I think this would be and this is just a work session for us to consider at our next meeting, that we can allow Ms. McCoy and Mr. Johnson to give us their input, and we can have that discussion next week.
Okay.
Unless, I wouldn't think they're prepared to do it today, but if so, certainly can do that today.
I would agree to that. There's
I
some
agree with
issues. There are some issues that I need to discuss.
And the Harnett County Agricultural Advisory Board.
Those are just two
that wasn't-
reappointments.
Oh, was it listed on the,
Not on the original, and we
Yeah.
received that on Friday.
Mr. Johnson, you know Mr. Black?
Lemuel Black, I do.
Would you recommend him?
I would.
I would recommend Carl Johnson. So if it's okay with the board, we will move the appointment of the Harnett County Agricultural Advisory Board. We will move both of these to the consent agenda for Monday. Approve them at the consent agenda. And we will move the Home and Community Care Block Grant Committee. Those we will move to the August 30 work session and discuss them again at that time. Is that agreeable with the board?
I think so. For me, it is.
Okay, all right. All right. And we will move to the county manager's report.
Thank you, Chair. First thing I'd like to do is introduce Janice Lane. She is our new Human Resources Director. We're excited to have her on board. She brings a wealth of experience and already been on the job a few weeks, but wanted to make sure and bring her and introduce Janice, so have an opportunity to talk with her in the future, I'm sure.
Welcome aboard.
The next thing I'd like to comment on is that tomorrow I will be in an all-day webinar related to ARPA. Things continue to move forward related to that. We still have not received our second tranche of funding at this time, and so we're waiting. It was not to arrive until at least 1 year after we received the first tranche. But we're beginning, we have a meeting scheduled with those department directors that will be supervising the projects now that we have Ally Fouts on board to manage the projects as well. So we're moving forward and working towards implementation. I think I mentioned before, we have almost all of the Viper radios, which was our first project. Almost all of those have arrived, and Larry Smith is working on a implementation installation schedule. And so that's moving along. That project is moving along much faster than we anticipated. We're about a month ahead of what we thought we would be. Also, I will be out of the office Thursday and Friday to attend the NCACC conference, and looking forward to that. So might be my first conference with the County Commissioners Association. So that's all I have.
All right. That completes our agenda. We do not have a need for a closed session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.